We do have a ton to get through in this episode.
Common sense is finally prevailing.
There was controversy this month, Dave.
I'm not particularly excited by that.
Secrets and things on set.
I haven't told them anything.
I think this is just good times all round.
Every Doctor Who is liked by somebody, and that's a really good thing.
Davo, my doctor.
I know we disagree on this one.
First world problems, Dave.
I get why fans are asking those questions.
Oh gosh, that's actually quite a lot to talk about.
It doesn't compute.
It's the elephant in the room.
That's okay.
Fandom versus the BBC.
The cardinal sin.
Moving along.
Lunch.
G'day, I'm Rob.
And I'm Dave.
And you're listening to the Doctor Who Show, where this month, November, we're looking back at the works of David Fisher in Doctor Who. So back to the Tom Baker era, some ace stories there. And of course, all the usual news and short topics and listener feedback segments you know and love too. Dave, hello.
Hello, I always enjoy our Writing Who episodes, and I'm actually quite pleased that in the end we landed on doing David Fisher, because I think there's a bit to talk about there.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything before we get to it, but yes, this is one that when we actually put it on the table and said, we could do David Fisher, I was like, oh, of course we could, yes. Yes. No, look, lots more to say there, but yes, you're right. We have news, we have short topics, we have our full stuff, as we always do for November. It's been a big month. It has, and I will say we're into the first Ashes test of the summer, which is exciting, although at the time of recording, day 2 hasn't started, and by the time you hear this, the match will have been over for a week. So it's probably not much use giving any commentary on it, except to say, what a bizarre first day, Dave.
Is this one of those ones where you sit there and go, gee, Rob, what a great victory over the English / gee, Rob, disappointing result there against the English.
Edit as applicable.
It is as applicable. I think we can safely say with 19 wickets on the first day, though, it won't be a tie or a draw.
No, it's not heading that way.
No.
Shall we get into some news?
We have, and there's a big piece coming up first you've got for us, Rob.
Yes, let's go back in time a little bit, folks. This isn't breaking news, but it gives us a chance to talk about some news that happened since our last monthly, and that's that Disney has punted Doctor Who. And in response, almost like they knew it was coming, Dave, the BBC was immediately out there on the front foot, there's a good cricketing term, saying it would make a Christmas special for 2026 on its own. Where do we want to start with this one? I've got 4 sort of routes we could go with this.
Oh, well, look, you've obviously got very planned routes, so you take the lead here, because all I've really got is questions.
All right. Well, my first one is a question too, actually. Disney punting the BBC. Was it the worst kept secret in television? Discuss.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I think everybody knew that was coming and was just waiting for the official announcement, yes.
Yeah. My second route is a point I made online at the time, and that's the time between the reality war ending and the Christmas 2026 special airing is going to be longer than the 1985 hiatus. Yet many people are a bit, about it. I mean, it's a gap, if you add it up, of 1 year, 6 months, 24 days. And I mean, the 85 hiatus is something people still talk about to this day. That returned with a whole season. This is a bigger gap that only returns with a special, and people are like, whatever.
Look, we have certainly got used to gaps between seasons over the course of the modern era. And that is partly a reflection of the way that television is made these days. You just don't have that regular annual season anymore. I think what makes this one a lot more like the hiatus, though, is not just the length, but the fact that a hiatus is when you don't know that the next series is definitely coming. Whilst we now know that there will be an episode of Doctor Who in December of 2026, is that the next version of Rose, or is that this Wilderness Years version of the telemovie?
Yeah, it's a big one, because I assume what's happening in the background now is the BBC doesn't want to do this forever off its own coin, and they'll be looking for another streaming partner. But what does that mean? Does that streaming partner want to talk about who gets cast as the next Doctor? Will they dictate how many episodes it is? Obviously, productions come into play. This does go into one of my other points, which is whether this Christmas special should be RTD's and maybe Bad Wolf's moment to knock it all on the head. Maybe have one last giggle Christmas episode, everyone's happy, but leave any new Doctor Who, maybe with a new streamer, up to someone else. And if that's the case, well, all bets are off. When could that be? There is no time frame for that new season.
Yes, I think that is absolutely correct. this certainly indicates an intent by the BBC to make some future Doctor Who after December of 2026, but it is not a plan. We certainly don't know what production company will make that Doctor Who, whether it's Bad Wolf or somebody else. We don't know who's going to fund that series of Doctor Who, because it won't be the BBC by itself.
No.
So this is at the moment a lot of good intentions, I think, but also a lot of mystery.
Yeah, well, the BBC's known for just saying things to kick the can down the road. That's what they've been doing for the last year, with everyone saying, "Oh yeah, Disney's dropped you guys," and they've been, vehement that that's not the case. We don't know that yet until Land Between the War and the Sea goes out. Well, surprise, Land Between the War and the Sea hasn't gone out, and we do know it now. So that wasn't the case in the end.
No, I think that. Yep, once again, absolutely right.
My final point, Dave, is your thoughts. Whether this Christmas special will feature the god-awful idea of a Billy Piper Doctor, will they bring back Tennant's 14th Doctor and do something with him, get him out of that garden where he's been sitting drinking lemonade for the past year or two? Or should they just bite the bullet and go with Paul McGann and finally give fandom what they've wanted for 20 years, Or could they do a multi-Doctor thing? It's Christmas, they can go a bit crazy.
Multi-Doctor is hard because you have to schedule a number of quite active and high-profile actors, and some of whom may not be interested in coming back. I mean, I can't imagine Shooty having walked off the set, so to speak, last time, not in a pejorative way, but just having gone, yep, I'm done, I'm out, I'm going. He's going to go, oh, yeah, and I'll make the very next episode as well. We know Capaldi's not keen to come back and do Doctor Who. We know Eccleston's not keen to come back and do Doctor Who, especially for Russell T Davies. Are you just back to Tennant and Jodie or Smith and Jodie? Like, we're actually kind of don't have a lot of options there. My view is that there actually is no good answer to this question because you almost certainly can't cast the next full-time Doctor because we don't know who's going to be running that show and who's going to be making it, who's going to be script writing, who's going to be paying for it. So it would be sort of very brave to cast a Doctor and then make somebody else pay for it afterwards. Therefore, you have to probably have a one-off Doctor, which I think is a problem, whether it's Billy Piper, whether it's, a one-off special with Tom Holland as the Doctor. I don't know, but we are, I think, and we've discussed this before, getting further and further into the area of devaluing a regeneration.
Yeah.
Where you can just sort of pop along and be a Doctor for an episode, a month, whatever. Oh, now we'll have another regeneration. I find it devalues the value of the Doctor. I find that it's hard to really invest in a Doctor that's there for 3 episodes, 1 episode, whatever the case may be. So now the 16th Doctor gets to be in one special, then we'll have the 17th Doctor for a year maybe, and then we'll have the 18th Doctor. I'm not a fan of that, but it's probably what they have to do. I think if I had to put $5 on the table, they will do a special with somebody as a one-off.
Okay, I think they're going to go multi-Doctor, but I think the smartest thing to do would be to get Paul McGann and just make the Chimes of Midnight. It gives people a Paul McGann story. It's a tried and tested story. The Brits love this ghost story for Christmas or telling scary stories at Christmas tradition. It ticks all those boxes. It's an absolute no-brainer. But I guess Russell wants to write it and pay himself, basically.
Yeah, and the thing is that Doctor Who, from 1963, certainly up until now, has been one linear story.
Yes.
We haven't sat there and done, well, this is going back or going forward. It's been one linear story. Would they be brave enough to go, forget about the linear story that's going on, here is a out-of-order special with Paul McGann, or Ncuti Gatwa, or Jodie Whittaker, or Colin Baker? Like, will it brave enough to do that? I don't think so. Do I think it would be great to see Paul McGann? Sure. Let's face it, there's probably someone in the BBC going, so, what's David Tennant doing this Christmas?
Yeah. That's what I'm scared of, actually.
Yeah, that's certainly very possible as well. As I said, more questions than we have answers.
Alrighty, shall we move on?
Well, before we do, I think it's just worth noting that some of the things we've discussed here are things that I had a conversation with friend of the podcast and Emmy-winning producer Dylan Rees about.
Oh, yes.
We will be issuing as a one-off special in a week or two. In that, I'm just talking about how modern TV is made and what these 34 people with producer titles actually do, and, why child actors are different than they were 30 years ago. But there is also quite a lengthy conversation about how you pay for TV these days and how TV is made these days and the implications of that for the future of Doctor Who. So that part of the conversation will dovetail in quite nicely with this, I think.
Lovely plug, Dave.
Thank you.
Shall we move on?
Well, we mentioned before, Rob, the war between the land and the sea, which has been in the news itself a couple of times over the last month. The first thing is to say that it was announced that this will be getting a screening in the UK on the 7th of December, and the rest of the world can get stuffed because you'll get it sometime later next year.
Yeah. Which I found disappointing because there had been this plan that it would go out on Disney and the BBC middle of next year. Obviously, that original plan was it would be bridging the gap between the end of Shooty Gatwa's era and a new season of the show, if everything had gone to plan and they'd been commissioned to do that and all of that. And it seemed almost churlish to me that the BBC got the news that they'd been dropped and like, okay, well, we're putting this thing out now. Stuff you guys and Disney. I assume Disney could move it forward, but if they've got their schedules planned out for the next 6 months, which I assume they have, maybe they don't want to do that because to this point in time, they haven't done that. They haven't come out and said, oh, well, we'll show it at Christmas too. It's not the plan.
Yeah, companies like Disney Plus and Netflix are very, very aware of what content they're putting out. They want to make sure that their content is spaced out in such a way that people need to keep subscribing for another month, and also that there isn't so much content in a month that it is impossible for a normal average viewer to consume, and therefore stuff that they've invested money in gets lost. So they have a very scientifically worked out schedule, and yes, they're not going to just change that because the BBC wants to change it. Yes, I agree, this does have a real feeling of screw you, Disney, we're taking our bat and ball and going home and just going to broadcast this without you. It is extremely disappointing because I think that we all are aware that television now is a global experience. Yep. And something gets dropped at a particular time around the world because fans communicate with each other in different countries. We are a podcast that goes out to a lot of people in Australia, but more people in the UK, plenty in the Americas, and, spattering across Norway and Fiji and, or Israel, all sorts of...
Finland.
Finland, yeah. We have a genuinely global audience. It's not a global audience of millions, but it's a global audience. And the same with every other podcast, the same with message boards, the same with chat groups. People in different parts of the world want to experience television as it drops and talk about it in real time. Podcasts like us and YouTube channels want to do hot takes of it quickly and have that be a global experience. That is not going to be the case with this big series that the BBC is making. The UK will be able to watch it, and they can have their hot takes and their discussions, and the rest of the world has the choice of either basically acquiring it illegally or waiting patiently and then being completely outside of that conversation.
Yeah. Any podcast that goes out with a hot take on it, for example, will be admitting they broke the law, if they're outside of the UK, that is.
Yes.
Quite an extraordinary situation to put people in. It certainly cruels any ratings Disney was hoping to get on the thing because people will turn to the high seas, to piracy, to watch it, and that will cut down the amount of people who watch it on Disney and the amount of revenue Disney gets from people who might have taken up a subscription that month to watch it. So, yeah, it's problematic on many levels.
Yeah, and personally speaking, it's a very long time since I've taken to the high seas to watch a piece of television because I'm not keen on the concept. And nowadays, the shows that I want to watch new are broadcast around the world on various streaming services. So,
yes,
yes, I have to pay for a particular platform now then. So, if I want to watch the new series of Star Trek, I need to get myself a month or two subscription to the Paramount Plus app. Fair enough. If I want to watch the new series of Stranger Things, I make sure that I'm renewing my subscription to Netflix, etc., etc., etc. I'm willing to do that. I can afford to do that. I'm not by any means rich or wealthy, but I have enough disposable income. I can have a couple of streaming services paid for at a time. And I'm philosophically happy to do that because doing it legitimately means that you're supporting the content, which means there's more chances going to be made, there's more chance people are going to be paid a fair wage. That's all fine. There hasn't been anything for several years now that I couldn't access legally, and if they're gone, maybe I will have to go and find that old High Seas account. And so I'm very reluctant to do it now, and the nature of the announcement, which really was, hey everyone, Britain's getting this and you're not, did actually kind of upset me and just go, okay, fine, stuff you.
Yeah, well, you were still kind of traumatised from the 60th. I think you made some points about that, where they put out stuff exclusively in the UK.
Totally. I mean, traumatised is a nice dramatic word, and maybe a bit over the top, but the idea of Doctor Who is now a global brand that you can only watch in the UK is, to me, just bizarre, because, let's face it, overseas sales or streaming sales are what has kept Doctor Who made for the entire run of the new series.
Yeah, yep, that's completely true.
So, look, I'm a bit irritated. We will have a discussion when it comes up over what we're going to do, but the honest reality is we can't legally do a hot take here in Australia.
No, we cannot.
And they don't seem particularly want us to, so I don't know where you're feeling, Rob, but that's kind of my gut instinct.
Yeah, stay tuned, dear listener.
Yes, in the meantime, there was another little bit of news from this series in which it was announced that the Sea Devils in The War Between the Land and the Sea will be known as Homo Aqua. And there was an interview with screenwriter Russell T Davies where he tells the Radio Times, quote, "with a twinkle in his eye, it's racist to say Sea Devil." Now, this led to a sort of a bit of a blow-up. I must admit, I read this and thought, well, yeah, this is old news. I remember the Silurians being Homo reptilia way back in the New Adventures and DWM in the 90s. So, yes, this is the way it's been done for some time. This is actually well established in canon. And the way that they wrote it, as RTD said with a twinkle in his eye, it's racist, I thought, this guy knows exactly what button he's pushing. He knows exactly how many shares this comedy is going to get. And for all of our critiques of RTD over the last few years, he is still a consummate J&T style showrunner who absolutely knows how to get into the media.
Yeah, I'll say my biggest takeaway from it, when I heard it, I thought, well, Homo is kind of like a mammalian thing, isn't it? Like, I'm no biologist. And I was thinking, is the plot line maybe that they do a hybrid? Because I know that one of the Sea Devils has like a human-like face and the others don't. And I thought, do they do a hybrid? And that is Homo Aqua. It's like this half human, half fish thing. Or is that it? And apparently that's not the case, so I was completely wrong. But that's where my mind went with it. I started delving into what that might mean for the story.
Yeah, no, look, scientifically it's complete and utter nonsense.
Right.
It would be more accurate to be something like Reptilia sapien rather than Homo reptilia.
Right, okay.
And that itself is not correct, but the sapien is the bit that says, modern day humanity rather than, and Homo is the type, etc. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I just felt that something was off using the Homo there. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Totally. But look, we'll see that series when we see that series.
Alrighty. Moving on. Last time we convened, we ran through what was known about the Film is Fabulous people getting out there and saying there will be missing episodes of Doctor Who returned at some point soonish. It's not pie in the sky. They know the episodes. They know where they are. It was only a really unfortunate event that interfered with them getting their hands on some episodes already. And in the recent Gin and TARDIS episode, Dave, you had Rob from 42 to Doomsday run back over the same information again. And we thought by the time we recorded this, there might be some new information out there. Sadly, there's not, but I will preface that by saying we're recording this episode a week early in advance of transmission. So in true Doctor Who show style, by the time you hear this, the world might be rejoicing at the return of 10th Planet episode 4 or something, and you're wondering why we're not mentioning it here. Well, that's why. What I will say, however, is that if you're not following the Film is Fabulous Facebook page, you should do yourself a favour and jump over there. They post really cool updates. If there's any Doctor Who news, it will get posted there and you'll see it. They've recently posted about some other missing films they found of late, like a 1964 short film from the BBC called Tell Mummy. And they're at all the fairs, and they're actually flogging off films from collections they've already been bequeathed. Naturally, these collections have films in them that are common as muck, and Film is Fabulous can't just pile those up somewhere in a warehouse. So by selling off those non-rare films, they also help their endeavours too, as well as the donations from people. So it's a really interesting thing to follow, but no update this time, Dave.
No, we are in that difficult position of recording on the 22nd of November. The anniversary is obviously the 23rd of November. By the time the anniversary rolls around in the UK, it's the 24th of November here. Yeah. And we're releasing this episode on the 30th of November. Look, if something really big breaks over the anniversary weekend, it's very possible, listener, you've already listened to our 15-minute special on that announcement.
That we haven't made yet.
And we don't know if we're going to make it, but I will pack the microphone and take with me to Canberra this week, just in case.
Just in case. Excellent.
Finally, some really fun news. Way back in our January episode this year, we flagged that Tom Baker was to be awarded an MBE. He's been made a member of the British Empire. That was in the New Year's Honours lists in the UK. That has now happened. As of the 10th of November, he is Tom Baker MBE. He was invested, and he said in an article, "It never ceases to amaze me how fondly people remember me 34 years after my last adventure in the TARDIS, and I found it hard to believe it was so long ago when I found myself in the TARDIS last week with my beloved scarf around my neck." And there were some lovely photos of Tom Baker with Louise Jamieson, and yes, he was all dressed up for his investiture with a scarf.
Yeah, they actually had a TARDIS prop there. They'd obviously planned this out very well. I think with one of the events companies that might have him doing signings and things like that. They had his Season 17 jacket and scarf, which he put over his street clothes at one point. They had his Season 18, the scarf at least. I'm not sure if they had the jacket. As you say, Louise Jamieson was there. It was made for some really nice images.
Yes, and it seems to have been a bit of a one-off investiture rather than the ones where 30 or 40 people will go to Buckingham Palace and the King or the Prince of Wales or someone will do a whole bunch. It seems to have been a bit of a special event.
Yeah, they didn't park the TARDIS prop in Buck House, that's for sure. No. So, congrats to Tom. And please, can this put to bed at long last that long-held belief among some fans that Tom had been offered a knighthood in the past and he told the establishment to stick it? It was some kind of fantasy, Dave, that I think anti-monarchy types had, basically projecting their beliefs onto Tom without any basis for it. And I'll say, even this past week, I said something along those lines, and someone said, well, prove he wasn't offered a knighthood, and knocked it back. And I just thought to myself, come on, think about what that means. It would mean they had to have offered him a knighthood, and he said, stick it. So they came back years later, knowing he's told them to stick it, and tried again, but this time it wasn't a KBE they were offering, or the next rung down, the CBE, or the next rung down, the OBE, but the rung below that, the MBE. Why? Why would they come back and offer another honour at all, knowing his previous stance, let alone one that was several rungs below what they had ostensibly already offered? It makes no sense. And for mine, it's all the proof you need. No matter how great you think Tom is, no matter how worthy you think he is, he was never offered a knighthood in the past, folks. He wasn't. Please stop saying that.
No, and generally speaking, you might get an MBE or an OBE for acting and for your services to acting, but generally to get a knighthood, there's another rung to it as well. It's Sir Elton John, who is one of the biggest British artists of all time and has done a huge amounts for AIDS charity and that sort of thing. Or it's Bob Geldof and what he's done for the African community. Or it's Paul McCartney, what he's done for charity, and again, one of the biggest names
just
ever.
Recently, David Beckham for his charity work.
Yeah, David Beckham, who again, an incredibly successful sportsman, but also now a British global icon. And yes, he has got charity rungs and other things to his bow. You usually have to have a bit more of that to get a knighthood. And look, Tom's done a lot of lovely work over the years and been to a lot of lovely fetes and raised money for the like, but I don't think he's Bob Geldof or Paul McCartney or David Beckham.
Sadly, no.
Sadly, no.
Shall we move on to short topics?
I think we should, Rob.
All right. I listened to David J. Howe's Who Me this past month, Dave, and cards on the table, I'm still not sure how this became a commissioned release rather than a self-published fan memoir. I mean, fair play to him. A publisher obviously said at some point, yep, give us your life story, Dave, but it is the memoir of a Doctor Who fan, not an actor on the show, not a showrunner, not a writer, just a fan. And I mean no disrespect by that. I don't think he'd mind being referred to as a fan. That's what he is. I was surprised anyone thought, though, there'd be an audience for this. What is it? Maybe 1 in 100 fans, 1 in 1,000 fans might be interested in this sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I gave it a go because, of course, I did. And honestly, a good half, maybe 3/4 of it is genuinely interesting. Once you hit the late 70s, he's joining the DWAS, he's popping around to Terrence Dix's house, he's being sent down the street by Terrence to meet Malcolm Hulk. He's like, oh, Malcolm lives just a few streets down. Go and see him now. He's hanging out with Douglas Adams at a studio taping. All this stuff really brings it alive. And there are modern era anecdotes, like he was in the house the night of that really chaotic 50th anniversary live TV special. You remember that one, Dave? Where One Direction beamed in and they were really confused and all of that. Well, David J. Howe was there that night and he gives some thoughts on what it was like to be there. That's really great stuff. But then there are whole stretches that just plod along. And that's fine if you're a celebrity and we're all desperate to know what you ate for lunch and all that sort of thing. But to give an example, there's a section on a Doctor Who cruise where instead of talking about the Doctor Who part of the cruise, like the guests and the fan reactions, anything like that, we get his thoughts on the scenery and what the dolphin show was like, and a story about trying to buy a beer with a $100 bill and the vendor couldn't change it, so he got a free drink and he was really delighted about that. But it's sweet, but it's really odd for a Doctor Who memoir. There was another bit, I think he's at Gallifrey 1, and his partner doesn't like the hotel, so they move to another hotel. That's the whole story.
Yep, right.
I mean, Fraser Hines suggests the move, so I guess that's the Who connection. But as a reader, you're thinking, why is this in here? Those would be my editing notes.
Yeah, interesting. I would not have picked this up off the shelf and grabbed it just sight unseen. But what you're saying about that insight into early fandom particularly, and how did fandom work prior to the internet, and really the home PC, that is actually quite an interesting thing, and that my interest is piqued. But yes, I can also imagine that we're not that interested in David's life outside of that, I guess.
Yeah, and look, I don't want to sound harsh, but I do have to mention it does edge into even Alan Partridge territory at places, especially in the audiobook, which is how I experienced it, because he reads every footnote mid-sentence. Wherever he's put, I don't know, an asterisk in the book, he just reads the footnote. And at one point he pauses to explain PAL versus NTSC video formats. At another point he explains Lego, as though the listener might not have encountered Lego before. After that, I was half expecting something like, I then enjoyed a cup of coffee, a hot beverage made from roasted beans. Something like that. But here's the thing. I think that's why the book works more than it doesn't. It's very sincere. It's completely sincere. I've never met him, but I feel like I know him now. He's enthusiastic. He's curious. He's basically really nice, because fandom has its share of weirdos and pricks, and he's clearly not one of them. At one point he even writes something like, or says in the case of the audiobook, the author, me, and the reader, you. And it's so literal and unnecessary, it's almost adorable. So yeah, it's a strange one. There's some genuinely great anecdotes from someone who's been in some interesting rooms with interesting people, mixed with sections where you wonder why they survived the edit. So it's not a must read, it's very niche, but it's cozy and it's nice, and I'll stop there.
No, that's lovely. As I say, my interest is now definitely peaked. And David J. Howe has been a lovely guy for a very long time. He was actually made an honorary member of the Doctor Who Club of Victoria back in the mid-90s in return for quietly waiving a substantial debt that the club owed over the Frame.
Oh, dear.
The magazine back in the day that was a bit of a saga in local fandom at the time. So he was very good to us back then.
He didn't write about that in his memoir.
Oh, that's probably for the best.
Very good.
An obvious short topic from me, Rob. My copy of the Season 13 Blu-ray box set arrived in the last couple of weeks. I haven't watched all of it because I did have to stop and watch the stories of David Fisher over the last fortnight, but I did watch the first 4 and, look, thoroughly enjoyed it. We all know that this is a wonderful classic season of Doctor Who. Terror of the Zygons was absolutely great to watch again. It looks fantastic. I was surprised at how few new special effects there were. I'd expected there to be a few more, but what there are nice to see, but I don't mind. I'm not a big fan of the new special effects. They're just a nice thing to have. Planet of Evil, yeah, look, I still think it's quite dull and boring. I did sort of try to give it a fresh watch. And again, part 1, I'm going, maybe this isn't too bad. And by part 2, I'm like, no, this is bad. And by part 4, I'm going, no, this is terrible. It's the one big fail of the Hinchcliffe era from my view. Pyramids of Mars, what can I say? It's a classic. I just absolutely loved watching that again. Android Invasion, look, again, sort of watching it focused and fresh on the Blu-ray, I was very aware of a number of large plot holes, but again, I don't care because it's done so sincerely and with such energy, and it's such a cool central idea, and I like the Kralls, and I've been to the village where it was filmed.
Yeah.
So, you know what, I just really enjoyed that. Now that I've watched all the David Fisher stuff and recorded this, I will get to the other stories later on. Probably worth noting there has been a bit of a controversy, certainly on the social medias, about some of the upscaling on this and just how clean it looks and the use of AI to polish some of it. I must admit, for the most part, had I not seen the controversy online, I wouldn't have really noticed. Yes, a couple of scenes, particularly the film scenes in Zygons, I've gone, wow, this is very, very clean, to the point of potentially being a little bit washed out. But that was all. Android Invasion, I did in the first part notice something was a bit amiss. I couldn't have told you what was amiss per se, but some of those particularly film sequences are so clean that they now look almost artificial. And so I get the controversy there. And I understand there was a tension inside the creative team behind the Blu-ray where the discussion is, particularly those paying for this, are going, no, people are paying for the most technologically possible, cleanest, updated, most modern look that we can possibly give you. And some of the people doing it are going, have you met Doctor Who fans? They want something that's genuine and reflects what they remember. And yes, they want it to be cleaned up so that it's watchable and you haven't got little artifacts and blurriness and all the rest of it, but there's a line to be drawn somewhere there. Some people have been really upset about this, and I understand why. As I say, I wouldn't have noticed outside a couple of shots. Yeah,
I've not cracked open my box at all, so I've not seen this firsthand. I have seen screen grabs, I have seen descriptions of it. It does seem to be not a uniform thing, but just in certain scenes. Sounds like it's more on the filmed stuff than not. But one person was saying it was characters were so smooth, like the hair had disappeared off some guy's arms in some scenes. I'm like, oh God, does no one sort of give a quality assurance check to this stuff before it goes out?
Yeah, and there's been some really good sort of before and after things. Pip Madley, who's on the various social media channels, does a lot of really good stuff on this, and they've done some quite good before and after comparisons. And yeah, when you do see it at that level, you go, okay, yes, they probably have interfered too much. Would I personally have noticed it without those sort of guidelines? Almost universally, no.
Okay.
I'll be interested to see what you think when you do crack it open, though.
At some point over the summer, I would say, yeah.
Nice.
Have you got a final short topic for us?
Yes, after a lot of people encouraging me to listen to the Big Finish production of Farewell Great Macedon, I finally had a chance to do it. Rob, you've been urging me to watch this for a long time. The guys over at Too Hot for TV did an episode of it recently that reminded me I should watch it. The guys at Sirens of Audio have told me that they think I would really like it. The only thing that stopped me listening to it even sooner is the fact that it is nearly 4 hours long.
Yeah.
And I wasn't particularly keen on, I'll watch 40 minutes here and 10 minutes here and 40 minutes on this drive. And so I did have a chance where I knew I was going to be in the car for about 3 hours on the weekend, last weekend. I thought, right, this is my chance. I'm going to listen to Farewell Great Macedon, which is a Big Finish adaptation of a set of scripts that were actually written for Doctor Who at the tail end of season 1. So this was a story that could well have been made like The Masters of Luxor. It is one that came very close to production, but in the end wasn't. It is very much in the vein of Marco Polo, except that it is about Alexander the Great.
Yeah.
I heard many good things. It was very long. I really enjoyed this. It did feel like a season 1 story, complete with some of those very odd, we haven't quite established things yet, like Susan referencing the fact that she comes from the 3100s, or the Doctor saying, well, actually, I did a medical degree when I was younger, and I took the Hippocratic Oath. And it's like, what? It has got all that. Do I think that it is as good as Marco Polo? No, but I rate Marco Polo as one of my top 10 stories ever, so it's not up there. I wouldn't swap out Marco Polo or the Aztecs for this. Would I swap out the Reign of Terror for this? I think I might. Historically, look, it is a very 1960s view on Alexander, in the way that Marco Polo is a very 1960s view on Marco Polo. It is a take, whether it's necessarily the most up-to-date historical take listening to the 2020s, probably not. I think the big weakness is, although there are some baddies, they're not quite as strong and as big a part of the plot as characters like Tagana, Totoxel, Elakia, Nero. They are there. They don't really interact with the crew, and are like, we know they're the baddies and we've got to stop them, which is a problem in the script. I also was very interested in the way that they portray Alexander's close friend,
Hephaestion.
Hephaestion, thank you, who is strongly speculated to have a very close, intimate relationship with Alexander the Great.
Oh, for sure they did.
I was curious as to how they would deal with that in a 1963 written story. There are a couple of nods to it if you're looking for it, but otherwise, no, they're just really good friends.
Yeah. Well, I'm an Alexander fanboy, so I'm just delighted that this exists, and, you know, our Doctor Who heroes are in that era with Alex. It's got bits of history in it, I think, that are accepted as history. I mean, as much as they can be when we look back at antiquity.
Yes.
There are things that we say, well, yes, we believe this happened. I think the death of Clytus is in there, for example.
Yes, what happens to Ptolemy afterwards.
Yeah, all of that stuff. You know, so that's really good. And as you've already said, it's not, this was a story title we had and we didn't have anything else, but we've written something now for Big Finish. Or I wrote 2 bullet points on a beer coaster once and now I've turned it into a Big Finish. This was actually a real script. Almost happened, as you say. I'm delighted about that. That's really good stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you for encouraging me to listen to it. I'm very glad I did.
All right, we've gone a little over there, but I think we've had some interesting stuff to talk about today, Dave. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes of the episode. David Fisher. And I'll kick us off by saying we started kicking this idea around, and as I hinted at earlier, I looked at the stories we'd be discussing if we did David Fisher, and I thought, oh, hell yes. You know, this is a guy who, you say his name to the average classic era fan, and I think it might draw a bit of a blank with some of them, at least initially, because he's not Holmes, he's not Nation, he's not Dix, Hulk, Boucher, he's not Douglas Adams, he's not even Pip and Jane Baker. You know, all of these names that just fall off the tongue. But you list the stories he wrote and another he was involved with, and it's like, Christ, why haven't we done a David Fisher episode before?
Yeah, it was interesting because we try and do a Writing Who episode about once a year, and in the past we've done Terry Nation and others, and we did Mark Gatiss recently from the new series, and when I put out on the social media, like, hey, we're going to do another Writing Who do you think we're going to do? And you know, obvious names that people would like to hear us talk about came up, Malcolm Hulke and Robert Holmes being two strong ones, and yes, they'll be great, but look, let's face it, a podcast of me talking about the work of Malcolm Hulke is going to be, this story is amazing. This story is also amazing. I love this story. And I don't know whether that's necessarily always the most interesting podcast. Whereas, yeah, David Fisher, I looked at them and go, well, there's 2 stories I really like and 2 others.
Right.
And at least probably 3 of them I haven't watched in quite a while. And yeah, he's look, as you said last time, the moment we say this, someone's going to point out we're wrong, but I can't think of a podcast I've heard in a long time, if ever, that was focused on the works of David Fisher.
Me either. No.
So yeah, that's why we've picked him. I walked into this really excited to watch a couple of his stories, very apprehensive to watch at least 1, maybe 2 of his stories, and that's a good thing because it gives us something to talk about. But yeah, this guy wrote for Tom Baker at the height of Tom Baker. He wrote 4 stories, well, 4.5 stories, arguably, over 3 seasons. That's a pretty decent effort.
Yeah, it really is. The first of which is The Stones of Blood. And I'm going to start off with a short confession, Dave, before I throw to you. When this episode's credits were rolling, I thought, oh, yeah, this is the one that starts with some campers and they're terrorised by an ogre. And it's really shocking. It's like a horror movie. Oh, that's a great opening. And it doesn't start like that at all. That's like the start of episode 3 or something. So It's true, as J&T would say, the memory cheats, and it certainly did in this case because it's been some time since I've seen Stones of Blood.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough.
I didn't know where else to put that in the conversation, so I put it up front.
No, look, I was very interested going into this to watch it from the point of view of David Fisher's writing.
Sure.
And what is interesting watching the documentary that accompanies this, where he does get interviewed, is that it's really clear that this isn't a guy who's trying to establish himself as a writer and saying to the Doctor Who office, hey, think about me writing for Doctor Who, or here's a pitch, or here's a draft, or here's my showreel sort of thing. This is an established writer who's a very professional, experienced writer that Anthony Reid, the script editor, has gone to and gone, mate, I need writers for Doctor Who. I think you would get it. could you give me a story that's about a scary stone circle and the third segment of the Key to Time? Sure, I'll do that for you.
Yeah, and what a premise to start with. And I think Fisher knocks it out of the park, being given those parameters, especially in terms of this just feeling utterly Doctor Who. By which I mean it starts, and we're in the English countryside, and there's some horror, and there's some weird people. And I always confuse Vivian Fay with that swinger lady from K9 and Company, but park that.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
Yeah, and all of that's very interesting. And of course, Professor Rumset is fantastic, although Fisher only wrote the words. It's Beatrix Lehman who brings it to life, of course, you know. But then, whoosh, we're in hyperspace. And there's sparkly little judge, juries, and executioners in the air, and the Doctor's pulling a wig from his pockets, and it's just bonkers. And what other TV show does this in the space of a story? So Fisher grasps that Doctor Who is horror and silliness and can go anywhere and do anything, even in the same story. And yeah, there are holes you can poke in it. Why Vivian just lives as Vivian or one of her past selves and never does anything grand on Earth, even though she's got the intelligence and the ability to do that. Later on, she's on the ship, and we learn later that the seal is very powerful. And she's had the seal in her hands for a period of time, but she never used it to do anything. You know, you can drive trucks through some of the plot points.
Well, she did use it to try and kill Romana.
Ah, good point. But she didn't try to get out of being put on trial with it.
No, that's true.
No. But I just still love this. It's very Doctor Who. It's like Fisher just gets it straight out of the gate.
Yeah, he absolutely does. I like the fact that when it needs to be scary and, you know, that whole watch from behind the sofa cliche, he absolutely lands it. And the spookiness of the location filming is really well done. Yes, I have been to the Rollright Stone, so I can say that it is quite an eerie place. But he also throws in those bonkers sci-fi concepts and obviously was quite serious about making it work in some sort of Doctor Who way, because there's a lovely bit where he's talking on the DVD documentary about how, well, we weren't quite sure how it would work in hyperspace, so we had hours of discussions over several bottles of port and ended up just working out exactly how hyperspace would work and how the Doctor could do it and how we would be on the ship. And in the end, there were far less bottles of port, but we had a really good outcome, I think.
It sounds like a good night.
It does sound like a good night. And again, this sort of dry wit of David Fisher works really, really well. It's not Douglas Adams-ish, and we'll come to that in a moment. But there was one exchange that I'd sort of missed in the past that I really got. It's between the Doctor and Amelia Rumford, where Amelia Rumford says, "Doctor, did I understand you correctly? That thing is made of stone?" "Yes, and it's closing on us fast." "But that's impossible." "No, it isn't. We're standing still."
Yeah, that's very good. I like that.
There's a lot of little exchanges like that are actually really witty. And you're right. It starts off as this horror thing. It's got a little bit of wit. And Tom Baker plays that really well. I think Tom Baker does wit far better than he does big humour. Maybe a controversial take there, but it's mine. Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, we sort of explore another science fiction element. We go to hyperspace. It's not the entire back half of the story. That really the Doctor and Romana are only in hyperspace proper for the last episode. And the Megara are a really cool concept. That idea of, well, we're here to impose justice in a completely ruthless and inhumane manner, missing the entire point of justice, is really clever. And it's got a great cast with some amazing female characters.
Yeah, it doesn't go out and beat its chest about that, but they're there and they do a great job. It's fantastic in that respect.
Yeah, it's got lots of clever little references to things like Sherlock Holmes, where you've got the portraits that show this has been the same person over a long period of time. That's really well done. And I think it's really helped by the fact that director Darryl Blake is a very serious, very technical director. So he's very worried about how things are going to look and how his shots are going to work and how things are going to sound. And I think that what works here is that he's done those really, really well. He's taken a lot of care with how the Augury is shot. He's taken a lot of care with how the day for night filming is done. He's taken a lot of care with making sure that the models look like the sets, and then just leaves the actors and actresses playing the Dr. Romana, Vivian Fay and Amelia Rumfeld to just do their thing. And my God, do they do it well.
Yeah. And chucks in some druids too, which I think Druids were having a bit of a resurgence in the UK in the 70s. I mean, the goodies take the piss out of them a few times at least. You know, come on, you Druids, come on.
Yes.
And that's a lovely little side thing as well. There's so much in this. It's really great.
Yeah, I think that David Fisher both gets Doctor Who, but particularly gets the Fourth Doctor immediately. And this is a very strong Tom Baker story because it's the combination of Tom being funny, Tom being deadly serious, Tom being clever, Tom being wacky. It's got all those things without Tom ever being silly.
Yes.
Which I like.
Agreed. Do you want to kick us off on Androids of Tara, his next story, and not just his next story, but Doctor Who's next story? He literally wrote 2 stories back to back. Yeah,
how impressive is it that this guy's obviously started writing The Stones of Blood, and Anthony Reid's gone, yeah, you get exactly what you're doing. Hey, do you want to write the next one as well? I'm thinking maybe a Prisoner of Zenda ripoff. And David Fisher's like, yeah, I can do that. I can write 8 episodes as well as I can write 4. I'll just keep going. I mean, that is very impressive. I mean, few writers get thrown in that fast, that quickly. Chris Boucher's one that comes to mind. I struggle to think of another.
Yeah, I honestly can't, which is why I raised it. It's really noteworthy.
Yeah. So look, I went into this one, and this is right up there for stories that I was absolutely bored, mindless as a kid and had no interest in whatsoever. Mm-hmm. As an adult, I absolutely revel in this one. This is just really enjoyable Doctor Who, but I get why at the age of 8 I didn't get it.
I don't remember seeing it as a very young person, so it's actually always been a favourite of mine. And in fandom, as I've got more into fandom over time, it's one of those stories where you meet people and they say, I like Androids of Tara, and I think I'm the only person who does. And you're like, oh, come here. And you put your arm around them, figuratively speaking, and say, shh, so am I. You know, and I think there's even more of us out there than we think because it's such fun. You know, again, like the previous one, the plot isn't deep. You can start saying, well, that bit doesn't work and that's not quite right, but it's such fun. It doesn't matter. The location filming looks great. Fisher subverts expectations of this season with Romana finding the segment of the key within the first few minutes.
Yes.
The key isn't the big deal. And I'm like, yes, clever, David. We're not making it the point of the story. Good. And all of that.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that David Fisher, although you're right, he doesn't use the seal as much as he could in The Stones of Blood, he has thought about, okay, what is this seal? How can this be the MacGuffin that has actually set a whole bunch of things in this story in motion? It gets used a couple of times to, you know, I mean, it's what Seraph Diplos is using to disguise herself as Vivian Faye and as the Doctor and all the rest of it. So he's thought about that, and then he's gone, well, for my next one, let's just not have it in at all. So that's really clever. It's worth noting that I think what you said about fans of this story is absolutely right. Brendan from Flight Through Entirety absolutely loves this. This is his favourite Doctor Who story. But what you said about the cast, I think, is a really, really important point. The director for this was Michael Hayes, who would also do City of Death, which we'll be discussing in a moment. He is very openly what I would call a casting director, an acting director, in that his view is if you cast correctly and well, then you actually don't need to really direct at all. Because if you've got the right people playing Prince Reinhardt and Zadek and Count Grendel of Gracht, you know, if you've got the right people cast as those, you don't need to sit there and go, okay, I think he'll be angry in this scene, or you need to pull back in this scene, or be funny in this scene. He knows that they're going to get their characters, they're going to work on their characters, and they're going to give a performance where he can just sit back and go, yeah, that's what I cast you to do. And it works so well here.
Yeah, and a good example of that is the physicality of the sword fight at the end. Obviously, the 2 actors involved, Tom Baker's one of them, are both very good at sword fighting, because it starts off, Tom's not taking it seriously at all. But when he turns and really goes for it, it's like, you know, and like Professor Rumford in the previous story, that's as much on these actors as what Fisher would have written on the page. I just love that part of the story, Dave, and I just wanted to mention it, so now it's mentioned. I love that sword fight.
Yeah, it's really good. Fisher has clearly taken this idea of, I've been asked to do a spin on The Prisoner of Zenda, but with androids, etc. Now, he was the one who, initially when they said, oh, maybe there should be a replica of the Doctor, said, you know what? That's obvious. How about a replica of Romana?
Yeah.
And so that's a really neat twist. But you're right, he's sort of gone, right, what are the swashbuckling notes that I need to hit? I need to have a castle with a drawbridge and a moat. Tick. I need to have a great big Errol Flynn sword fight at the end. Tick. And he delivers those in spades. I need to have somebody escaping on a horse. All of that. But then he puts his sci-fi twist on it. He's got the not at all lightsaber swords. He's got the not at all Chewbacca's bowcasters.
Yeah.
He's done all that. But also just the writing of Count Grendel is really, really well done. Now, absolutely you're right. Peter Jeffries then elevates it to another level again. But he's just gone, how can I make this person a charming villain? Not moustache twirling, not over the top, not ridiculous, completely insane. With his whole, Archimandrite, you're here to perform a wedding, but sadly the king is a bit unwell, so you then have to perform his funeral. Oh, and then I'll be marrying his widower. Just completely bonkers, but done so well. The other thing Fisher does really well that I think is so important and such a big part of good Doctor Who is he's created a world. Now, does the world of Tara necessarily work when you really look down deep inside of it? No, because it's your classic Doctor Who world where the entire world is about 4 square kilometres and 6 people. Fine. But you do get this sense of how the laws work and how the aristocracy works. There's this sense of they once had a great big plague that wiped out a lot of the population, so that's why they invented androids. This idea that the aristocrats have swords and the peasants have technology. It's a really interesting sort of world that if you're just watching this, you go, yeah, I get this. I know where I am. I know how this world works, and he's put some thought into it.
Yeah, and some hilarious dialogue as well.
And some hilarious dialogue, some great location filming, and I'll just say again, I have been to Leeds Castle, so I have seen it.
Did you do the Key to Time tour, Dave, of the UK?
Well, I haven't been to where they filmed the Pirate Planet or Power of Kroll. Maybe I need to get to that swamp next time I'm in the UK. Yes,
maybe.
That's a big one. Look, you're right about the dialogue. This is the episode that gives us the line, a hamster with a blunt penknife would do a better job, which still makes me chuckle. Even that very slow start at the start where, look, it does take a little while to get into this story, but it's got great Tom Romana dialogue. Again, Fisher writes the Fourth Doctor and Romana just instinctually well. But that idea of the Doctor just, you know what, I might go fishing. You've got something important to do. I don't care, I'm going to go fishing.
Yeah.
And even, Romana takes him at face value, like, you can't fish for the next 50 years. Of course not. I'll get bored. I just want to fish for the next few hours.
Yeah.
They're just great little moments that are just perfect Fourth Doctor.
Yeah, it's really good.
Now, Rob, the next story David Fisher is credited on is not the next thing that he wrote.
Well, The Gamble with Time, Dave, which becomes, of course, City of Death. The backstory to this, briefly, is the script was due and there were filming schedules locked in because they wanted to go to France and all of that. And Fisher had some sort of personal crisis. I think there was a divorce and custody issues going on, and he just couldn't deliver revisions. He was unavailable for production meetings, and in the end he had to withdraw. And so Douglas Adams stepped in, and of course at this time Adams was juggling too much already in the script editor's chair, but he just had this, some people say a couple of weeks, other people say it was like a long weekend. He just rewrote what Fisher had already written for The Gamble with Time. He kept a lot of the core concept, I'll say. The Paris setting, art fraud, there was a time-related plot, there was an alien who splintered across time. But he just gave it this Adams twist. I think Graham Williams might have helped him as well. We lost some things, like I believe the Doctor and Romana would have landed in 1920s Paris, then whoosh, would have time jumped to 1970s Paris. I think that would have looked quite cool and effective because you could have used, obviously, Paris for both settings and sort of shown it between the 20s and the 70s. That would have been really great. We lost some of that stuff, but I think Adams added a whole new level to it. So while Fisher didn't write this, it's probably 60-70% Adams by the time they finish with it. He did write the bare bones of it, I'll say.
Yeah, a lot of the original ideas and the story beats are from David Fisher. Certainly you're right, in the rewriting process, Williams and Adams, and I think it's fair to say Williams probably did the restructure of it, and Adams then did the dialogue, because let's face it, that's how the two of them work.
Yeah.
Williams and Adams did restructure it down, so rather than being 2 trips to meet Leonardo in Renaissance Italy, there was only one.
That's right.
They cut out the gambling in 1920s Monte Carlo, I think it was meant to be. They cut that away because, again, Williams wasn't sure that the Doctor gambling was a good look. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. So they just went, well, actually just doing the art heists to paying for things is entirely appropriate. They changed the ending, but just from the Doctor dissuading the Scaroth character to Duggan punching the Scaroth character, and added in a few other things as well. So look, it's definitely the story beats our Fishers, but the dialogue is definitely Adams. Interestingly enough, Fisher himself says in the doco that he was given a 75% fee for the writing of the scripts. He thought he deserved about 35% based on how much of his ideas remained in the script. He also says that at that point, Douglas Adams had just got £500,000 for the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and Fisher didn't think that he needed the money, so he was happy to take it. But I think that idea that when Fisher himself says, look, I deserve maybe 35% of the creative input for that, I think is a honest and quite fair indication.
Yeah, well, I was saying 60-70% was Douglas, so if it's actually 65, it's on the money.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, how do you divide these things up? Again, it's just worth saying that what we can glean from this is that David Fisher's instinctive idea of to what good, cool, fun ideas are going to work in a Fourth Doctor story are once again on evidence, because they absolutely were used in one of the best ever stories of Doctor Who.
Yes, and then reused in Dirk Gently's.
That's true.
All right, shall we move on to another David Fisher proper story, which is Creature from the Pit?
Yes. Now, I have not watched The Creature from the Pit probably since the DVD came out about 20 years ago.
Wow.
It is a very long time since I've watched this one, because I don't have fond memories of it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that the very first scene of the doco that accompanies this on the Blu-ray is David Fisher saying that he doesn't think it works. Mm-hmm. And it would be wrong for me to say he blames Douglas Adams, but he does identify Douglas Adams' script editing ability or lack of focus as being the chief culprit in this, in that whereas other script editors would go, here's what structurally doesn't work in the story, and here's what in production terms won't work in the story, let's focus on that. Douglas Adams went, here's what's really fun in the story, let's really work hard on that, and then by the time you come time to shoot, it's like, oh, we kind of forgot all the other bits and didn't really make it work properly. And I think that's probably a very good reflection of what we get on screen. I think that there are some really cool ideas in Creature from the Pit. I think there are some interesting characters in Creature from the Pit. I'll talk more about those in a moment. There are some nice little moments and witty bits of dialogue in Creature from the Pit. Do I think as a story this works with enough working beats across 4 episodes to hold remotely together? Not at all. I think that it struggles in a number of ways, but I can see the bits that Adams really loved and polished, and I can see the ideas of Fisher kind of trying to come through in all that. Where did you land, Rob?
Well, it's no Stones of Blood or Androids of Tara.
No.
Let's say that. But we're in a weird place. I mean, when you talk about what's on screen, and this isn't specifically what he's been writing, what's on screen, I mean, Christopher Barry's directing this as well. We've got this studio-based jungle that looks good because if I have this right, it's shot on film. And there's sort of mist, and Tom is sweating really bad. The atmosphere seems very oppressive. It's like the jungle at the start of Raiders of the Lost Ark. You actually feel this is a location, which is extraordinary because, again, it's a studio. But in terms of what Fisher's writing, I think this idea of sticking this ambassador down a hole, pretending he eats people, but when he gets his voice thingy back, it's a really nice plot twist that he hasn't been eating people. He's actually quite a decent guy. He has called in the cavalry and the planet's going to get blown up because of him, but he's very polite about it. I think it's just a really interesting idea. It feels very New Who to me, this idea of a monster that's not a monster. But there's still some menace because of something that this monster who's not a monster has done. I think there's a good idea in there, but yeah, it doesn't come off on screen.
Yeah, I think Fisher was given the order to put in a very big monster, which probably was a mistake because the production team wasn't able to do it. They struggled to do it with Kroll last season. I don't know why they thought they could do it a season later when they had even less money. I think you're right. I think that Fisher's core ideas are really good. I think that his conception of a planet that is low in metal and how would that look. Metal now becomes a precious commodity. They haven't got the tools for cultivation, etc. is an interesting one. Does it remotely hold up to a bit of thought? Absolutely not.
No.
Economics doesn't really quite work that way. And if metal was this really, really scarce thing, would they be using it for some of the things that they do use it for? Probably not.
Yes.
Would you just let your guards have a solid metal sword, for example? No. And there could have been a creative way to go, what will they have instead? That they sort of miss a trick there. On what you say about the filming, I think that's a really, really good point. The use of film in studio for the jungle does make the jungle look better. I don't know whether that was a deliberate decision. I do know at this time a number of Blake 7 episodes have got film used in studio, and the reason was very simply that they had a budget for film, and the producers had to use that budget or they would lose it next season. So they're like, right, what are some scenes that I can film on film that would make it look a bit edgier or a bit different? And so they do that. Perhaps this was a similar thing here, and Greg Williams has gone, well, I need to use up my film allocation in this story. I know, I'll do it in the jungle, then make it look outdoorsy, which is a really clever idea if he did.
Yeah, there's just the lighting and the sweat and it's great.
Yeah, no, that part does look really good. The sets are fine. Let's say it, Arato looks terrible. It moves terribly. Its attempt to sort of swallow people is just embarrassingly bad. Great concept that doesn't work at all. You then get to sort of the 4th episode where you have this idea of just throwing neutron stars at planets, and if you wrap a web around it, it gets lighter, so therefore you can... that's just utter nonsense. Like bad sci-fi nonsense that David Fisher should have known better than. And then when you the effect of Arato's spaceship trying to weave a web around a neutron star, that was never going to look good. And on the 1978, 99 budget, whatever it was, it looks terrible.
Yeah.
That's definitely a problem. I will say, once again, David Fisher shows he's a master of writing really good female characters. Adrasta's a pretty good character. Lady Corella's a pretty good character. I don't think it's good as Vivian Faye and Amelia Rumford, but, once again, strong female characters.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to that science stuff you were saying. It takes Arato a while to sort of weave his little spaceship, but then he can weave around the supernova much faster. I don't know how that works. The design for Arato is very uninspired, and no podcast can get by without mentioning at Dave Tom pressing his lips to something very suspicious looking. It's there to get a laugh, I guess, from Tom, no one's allowed to say what that looks like, so we'll draw attention to it the only way we can. We just won't say out loud what it is. And I get how that can be the butt of jokes, but I think going too far down that path, which a lot of people do, helps people to miss that there's actually a decent story underneath. Not a genius one. It's not Stones of Blood or even Tara, as I said, and it does have its faults and doesn't come across properly, in quotation marks. But there is more to it than I think received fan wisdom says about this one.
There is some merit. It is buried very deeply in there. Another thing that I think pulls it back is the bandits. They are an interesting idea that we would have this group of bandits that are outlaws and they want to steal the metal. And I get that is a logical extrapolation of this idea that, yes, that there would then be people living outside the law who want to accumulate the metal, but they're written as really just too dumb to exist characters. The interaction between the two sort of leaders is just unbelievably dumb. I think that the decision of John Bryans to play the lead baddie as a sort of a Fagin-style, London Jewish outlaw. I get the literary inspiration that's probably led him there, but watching it today, it's deeply problematic and a little bit uncomfortable. And look, John Bryans turns up in a couple of Blake Sevens. In fact, he is one of the baddies in my all-time favourite episode of Blake Seven, Rumours of Death, and he gives a very different performance there, so he's clearly an acting choice. I don't think that whole plot thread works at all. And the point where you've got these sort of ridiculous dumb comedy relief hairy bandits suddenly being stabbed by Corella with the almost Bond-esque, witty sort of, there's another 6 inches for your collection moment, is just like, oh, that's a bit nasty. These guys are the comic relief, and you've just stabbed him. But then having had that moment with that cold-blooded line, John Bryans chooses to do like the comedy fall.
Yes.
So I don't know what's going on here. I suspect that so much time and effort is being put on trying to like just make Erato work a little bit, meant that there's no time for, is that the way you're going to do it? Is that the choice you're going to make? Maybe we should do another take here. There's many of those. Maurice Barry, who turns up, the director of Tomb of the Cybermen, a great director, gives a terrible performance that needed another take in a couple of slots. Jeffrey Belden is probably the one who does walk on, gets what he needs to do, and just does it really, really well. He's probably the one that really saves this, but he's actually not in it as much as I remembered.
Yeah, I've actually seen anti-Semitic ideas thrown at his character. Even someone saying, oh, look, he's got the hook nose. It's like, well, that's Jeffrey Belden's nose. It's not a fake nose. And I think some of that's very misguided, but I get what you're saying about the Fagin stuff.
Yeah, look, yes. Look, we're not a podcast that likes to go and lecture people about these things, but we observe and we've observed. So fair enough, I've made that point. I think that the mix of Fisher's wit and Adams' humour doesn't work. I think that they are very different wits. Adams is a comic genius.
Yeah.
David Fisher is a very dry, witty man. And I think it lurches between the two. A really good example being the How to Climb Everest in Easy Stages, which just feels... It almost feels like a Family Guy style cutaway. It's just so outside of the story. It's just like, what are they doing here? Okay, this is quite funny, but what? This doesn't work. You've got the Doctor in a great big piece of danger, and now he's doing a comedy sketch on, how to translate a Tibetan book on how to climb a mountain. Doesn't work for me.
Yeah, I need to read Tibetan. Oh, lucky I've got this book.
How to read Tibetan, yeah. Do not be afraid. Look, and if that was in an episode of Hitchhikers, you go, that's a really funny thing. It just doesn't feel right in a scary story about the Doctor being thrown into a pit with a great big monster.
Well, do not be afraid is don't panic, right?
Yes. So look, I'm glad I rewatched this. I really am glad I rewatched this because I can see some cool performances. I can see some good ideas. I can see some merit.
Yes.
It doesn't work at all.
Which then leads us on to the Leisure Hive. And Dave, this is a story I always put on and think, oh yes, it's the new era, it's the new credits, the new look of everything, that bizarrely long panning shot, Tom's costume, And I think I'm going to like it. And then it just falls over. It's people yelling gobbledygook, and the Doctor's just observing that for most of the first episode. And people talk about the two big gotcha moments, like the first one, the Doctor goes into a box, his limbs come off. The next one, he goes into a box, he turns old. But to me, it's just a bloody bore. I have never, ever gotten into this story. Every time I put it on, every 5 to 10 years maybe, I think I'll get a different result, which must be pretty insane, wanting a different result when I know what I've thought of it before. I think this is by far the worst of the 4 stories from Fisher. It's just plodding, it's uninteresting. I really can't get into it, and I don't like it. There, I've said everything.
I think that the Leisure Hive looks great.
Okay.
And it sounds great, and there is an energy to it that absolutely is worthy of the effort that John Nathan Turner and Barry Letts put into rejuvenating Doctor Who at the start of their tenure. I agree it is very, very dull. And I think perhaps the really big marker of that was really apparent to me when I watched it this time is when we got to the cliffhanger for part 3. And I'd sort of forgotten what the cliffhanger actually was. And so the Famazi bursts in and it takes Brock's mask off. Mm-hmm. And I thought, is that the cliffhanger? But hang on, what about all this stuff Pangol's about to do? Like, isn't that the main plot? And I realised that although Pangol started a bit of like, I'm going to be the chairman, we're going to have a new era. I'm like, okay, where's that going? The idea of Pangol then cloning himself, or whatever you want to call that process, and creating an army that's then going to declare war on the universe because the warlike Argolans are back, is not done until a few minutes into part 4. Now, that's to me is the big action premise of this story, and it's confined to part 4, and it's over about 6 minutes later.
Yeah.
So I think that there is a really big structural flaw at the heart of this. I think the build-up is actually pretty good. I actually don't mind the design of the Famazi. Yes, they're notoriously a bit fat, but the heads look pretty cool. The sound effects is pretty cool. And the way that Lovett Bickford as the director films them initially, works really, really well. And that builds up this sinister idea of something's going on. But I think that the central idea is really sort of buried. And I also think that the premise of the Famazi that David Fisher envisaged is lost, because you listen to him talk about what he was looking for, is he was really going for that mafioso type send-up. And he actually wanted the Famazi to be sort of like humanoid insects with really dark glasses and, mafia hats. And that would have been just a really kind of funny, witty sort of concept of having these intergalactic mafia dons. Yeah. And I think he's right. That would have actually been a really fun concept that gets almost completely lost.
That would be something, if that had happened, that I would be sitting here going, now that's deeply Doctor Who. You won't see that in many other shows. I'd probably be giving that a tick.
Yeah, it's interesting. What I think has happened is that we know that across the course of season 17, the silliness quotient got bigger, Tom got further off the leash, and the money was running out. And that led to some stories that are very fun to watch, but they are not seriously made. I've got some time for The Nightmare of Eden, but it is just ridiculous. Sharda was interesting. Horns of Nimon I can defend, but it's got some points where it is ridiculously silly. Hello, Graham Crowden. There are problems with that, and there is a reaction to that by Letts and John Nathan Turner and Bidmead. And unfortunately for David Fisher, being the first scriptwriter out of the blocks in the new regime, a lot of Fisher's wittiness is really just ripped out of this, whether it's the concept of the Famazis, whether it's the concept or just some of the lines. Now, some of the wit does sort of work in there. I think the idea of the Doctor making somebody collapse because they're not ready for warp equations is just really funny, and I really like it. And he does get a number of other really quite witty moments. Again, Tom Baker delivering David Fisher dialogue is always really, really fun, but it is very, very dry. And I think had this maybe been script 4 or 5 in the season, where they had sort of made their point and were easing back to a balance of humour, this would have been a quite different script.
Yeah, completely agree with you. And again, like there is in every Doctor Who story, there are things you can drive a truck through. There are holes. This idea of reversing time, making people younger. That's just a visual sort of thing. What happens to the person's insides? What happens to their brain? What if you revert back to a child and the brain is smaller? Do you still have the thoughts of a 30-year-old or 50-year-old in a child's brain? I don't get how any of that works. It's all just gobbledygook, as I said. I lose interest in this one very quickly when people start talking, Dave. I really do.
Yeah, and look, Fisher does say that he went to the trouble of going down to Cambridge University and meeting some people from the astrophysics lab and talking about tachyonics. And okay, if I have a situation where the Doctor needs to do this, what's something he might say? What are words that I can use? And so he has put some genuine research into it, and that is a good thing. I like the idea of putting in real world, new cutting edge science like tachyonics into the script. I think that works.
Well, I think he'd done similar with the supernova in Creature from the Pit, hadn't he, as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That was sort of back in the days where if you rang the science faculty of a university and said, I'm writing for Doctor Who, could I come down? They're like, oh my God, yes, you can. Like that.
They're all fans.
He revelled in that, which is a really good part of his writing. A couple of minor points. I think that the model of the Leisure Hive, when it's just sitting in the sand, hasn't aged that well, but when it's shot in close-up, and particularly where the director does things like going through windows or then merging two bits of the set made to match it, it does work really, really well. I think that the concept of the recreation generator in the script is not really realised in the production, particularly because it's clear that the recreation generator is meant to be a thing that you can go in, and it's got walls that you can pull apart and you can have multiple people in there, but it's very clearly a room that's big enough for about one person barely. This idea that Tom Baker was quietly working away in a corner and Pangle didn't even notice when he walked in just doesn't sit with what you see on screen. David Haig's performance is exceptionally good. It's really, really impressive, particularly given it was, if not his first, one of his first TV credits.
Yeah, wow, okay.
And you mentioned there, Rob, the opening shot on the beach, which goes for 90 seconds. I did listen to the commentary for the first episode because I was curious about a few of the things on this, and I knew that the director, Lovett Bickford sounds like a moving company, doesn't he?
It does.
We move with Lovett Bickford, the careful movers. Lovett Bickford and Christopher H. Bidmead are on this, and it opens with that shot, and Lovett Bickford going, "I'm so proud of the shot. Isn't this a wonderful opening?" And you can almost feel Christopher Hamilton Bidmead staring at him going, "What? Are you nuts? Yeah. It's 90 seconds of a beach. What are you talking about?" And they almost have that conversation. He's like, no, but it builds up and then you slowly get the story coming in. And Bidmead's like, "It's the first 90 seconds of our series and it's a beach. What are you doing, man?"
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
Crazy.
Yeah.
All right. So we're not fans of this one then.
It's another one that I appreciate, but I don't think it quite works.
All right. Well, let's wrap up. I think as people can tell from everything I've said here, I'm really fond of Fisher's writing. It's only when we get to the Leisure Hive that I think it takes a real dive. Yes, I am defending Creature of the Pit there. Even then, I think there are some interesting ideas, some good lines, all of that, even in Leisure Hive. But something just goes amiss there for me. The other three, I think, are perfectly fine. I would have liked to have seen Fisher continue, Dave. Not in the sense that he was a brilliant writer, but primarily in the way I would have liked to have seen him write for Davo. And also, I think the way he was just a safe pair of hands. He might not be writing the prestige story of each season, but just filling in the other slots with something weird and a bit humorous from someone who gets what Doctor Who is.
Absolutely. I think that his writing is genuinely very, very good. He's witty. He writes good female characters. Again, we didn't mention Mina in the Leisure Hive, but another example of that. He thinks about the big central concepts of the story and how they're going to work in a Doctor Who universe. He gets the Fourth Doctor. There's a lot of things that really, really work there. I think that when it's his old mate Tony Reid who is commissioning him and script editing him, and they've known each other for a long time, they've worked together on other shows, there's a really good synergy between them. That means you get the best of David Fisher in Stones of Blood and Androids of Tara. David Fisher working with Douglas Adams, David Fisher working with Christopher H. Bidmead isn't quite as natural a collaboration as it was with the others, and I don't think that his work comes out quite as well, particularly given that Adams didn't really know what he was doing as a script editor. Genius writer. Nobody agrees that he's a great script editor. And you see that again in what Williams has to do to get the script in line for City of Death. And Christopher Bidmead, who again, new to the script editor's role, very much pushing a particular barrow, and perhaps misses the wood for the trees a couple of times in his first go and all that. Doesn't quite work. But for solid stories, all of them have their defenders, all of them have their fans. I don't think any of them are universally hated by any means. Certainly the Leisure Hive isn't. Creature from the Pit has its defenders, and a lot of people love the Kid of Time season now. So, a really good body of work, and absolutely, I think he would have been fantastic to see work in the future, where Eric Sayward is perhaps struggling sometimes with good Doctor Who concepts. In walks David Fisher and gives him one. That would have been a great thing to see.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. There was that thing about JNT not wanting past writers coming back. I mean, JNT's writing with Fisher here as a past writer, but I think as time went on, he wasn't rehiring people.
No, and I think that JNT did have a number of production issues with the Leisure Hive, particularly when it came to the director. And so maybe there was just I just want to abandon that whole team. I'm not going to work with them again. I don't know. But yeah, I've really enjoyed watching those 4 stories. I'm glad I watched those 4 stories. I'm glad we've looked at David Fisher because he's a really entertaining guy to watch in docos.
Yeah, he certainly is. Dave, before we get to listener feedback, I just want to thank everyone who sent kind words about my dad. For those who don't know, he passed away on October 22nd. So it's been a month now, and it'll be over a month when you actually hear this, which is why I can talk about it more easily now than if it were fresh. We'd actually recorded the October episode the night before he died, so there was no mention in that episode, and other episodes that have come out since, like List Makers, were recorded earlier as well. I did touch on it very briefly in the little solo episode I put out a few weeks ago, Doctor Who and the Mouse That Quit, and I said I'd say more about it on the next monthly show. So in a nutshell, I loved my dad. He taught me a lot. He did so much for me. He was a real role model. He got my Star Wars fandom, I think, more than my Doctor Who fandom, which always amused me. I think simply because he'd actually watched Star Wars. He even took me to see Empire in 80 and Jedi in 83. He was there with me in the cinema. And he'd buy me Star Wars books. I have the great Making of Jedi book from about 1983, inscribed by him. It was a Christmas present. So Star Wars was fine, but Doctor Who was just some TV show I don't think he'd seen an episode of. So he got Star Wars, didn't get Doctor Who. And yeah, look, I could tell 100 stories about him and not scratch the surface. He was just a real Harrison Ford, old school, man's man, and I'm going to miss him.
No, thank you, Rob. All of our sympathies to you, and no, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. And again, thanks to the listeners. I know this isn't what the podcast is usually about, and we keep certain parts of our lives private for all sorts of reasons, but this was something I didn't want to ignore. It would have felt strange not to acknowledge it here. So again, thank you for the messages. There are some genuinely kind people out there.
No, there really are. There really, really are. Speaking of messages, do you want to kick us off with our listener feedback, Rob?
Yeah. Moving on, we had a ton, and I mean a ton of listener feedback this past month.
We've had a ton of listener feedback this week. I've heard that before somewhere.
Especially through our social media channels. And frankly, there was too much to cover here, so we'll do, I think, a best of the past month. And apologies if you sent us something and it hasn't made it in. I'll kick us off with Charlie Proctor via email. He says, "Hello chaps, during your recent Listmakers Convention episode, I was reminded of a slightly surreal convention I attended in 2018 called VwarpCon in Manchester, in the UK. It was about £60 a ticket and had the following guests: Davo, Paul McGann, and Night of the Doctor co-star Emma Campbell-Jones, Sophie Aldred, Colin Baker. I don't think there's a convention in the UK that Colin doesn't attend. John Leeson, Graham Harper, and Philip Hinchcliffe. I will certainly be forgetting others. It was a spectacular lineup which I imagine could not be replicated in Australia. However, the whole thing took place across several restaurants at a shopping centre. When you met a guest, you sat down next to them in a restaurant booth. I found myself making quite awkward small talk as if speed dating, sometimes for several minutes. One of the venues was actually a nightclub, and I remember being the first to meet Graham Harper and Philip Hinchcliffe as they sat down in a fluorescent white plastic booth in the sticky VIP area. They both looked hilariously befuddled.
Oh, wow.
I don't write to disparage the convention. I had a fantastic time and met nearly every guest with minimal waiting. It still feels like a fever dream, however. Dave often talks of his moments with guests at conventions. I wonder how he would approach them in a nightclub. Enjoying the podcast as always. All the best from Charlie.
That's very funny, Charlie. I don't know how I'd approach them. Awkwardly, probably.
Yes. What a strange convention.
That is odd, but cool. An email from Jessica Peterkin. Hello, Rob and Dave. Your podcast is my favourite. Nothing better than listening to your chats. When I heard Dave mention on your last episode how much he enjoys Children of Earth, I immediately thought, why hasn't the Doctor Who show ever done an episode devoted to this remarkable Torchwood series? Please add it to your list of future episodes. Thanks so much, Jessica.
Yes, and I'll talk about this a bit at the end of the show when we talk about what's coming up for December.
Yes.
Now for a selection of comments on the Disney news and my little video I mentioned a moment ago, actually, that Doctor Who and the Mouse That Quit. The first is from Joe Castles via email. He says, "Dear Rob, I'm really sorry to hear about your sad personal news. I'm sorry for your loss." Thank you, Joe. I was massively relieved to hear that the BBC officially plans to produce a new episode of Doctor Who, and a Christmas special no less. In the last year or so, we've had many predictions of doom for the show, and I personally believe that the last shot of Doctor Who was going to be that of Billie Piper saying, "Oh, hello." The reassurance from the BBC that the TARDIS is not going anywhere hit as not a reassurance at all, given that the official line in 1990 was that there might be a slightly longer gap than usual between seasons of the show. That ended up being 16 years, bar a one-off. Now, I know that all that's been officially announced is a Christmas special, but the announcement also included some reference to a new series too. I'm not so naive as to think that a new series is in the bag, but it's clearly being given serious consideration. All of this sounds more reassuring than the piecemeal statements that emerged over the summer. While it will be 19 months between episodes of Doctor Who, we will get the spin-off to bridge that gap, and there will no doubt be some activity in the expanded universe. When we've had gap years in the recent past, there's always been some exciting developments in the audios, comics, books, or official podcast series like Redacted. I also know that you and Dave will be reporting on this and filling the time in with some of your own excellent content. Of course, there are questions to be answered. Who will play the Doctor? How will people outside the UK be able to access the new episode when it is made, now that Disney Plus won't stock it? What will happen to the classic episodes, the new series episodes, and those that were made with Disney money? Will they be available via a different global streaming service, or only piecemeal in different places? We don't yet know. However, over the next 14 months between now and the new episode airing, I'm sure that some, if not all of these questions will be answered. We may even learn whether we'll get a new series in 2027. Given that some serious commentators were predicting no new episodes until 2030 or beyond, I'd say that we've dodged a bullet. Take care, keep making the show. Best wishes, Joe Castles.
Some very good comments there, Joe, and some very good questions that, as we said in our new segment, we don't have answers to yet.
Yeah, I will take a punt, though, Dave, on the one-off Christmas special next year. I reckon the ABC might get it here.
That's the most likely, but is it Adelaide Amazare? No.
No,
because they've got to buy it.
Yeah. But, they know there's an audience for it, so they might do it. We'll see.
True. We'll see. We have one from Adrian Beck, who says, I'm excited that we have some clarity about the future, and I think maybe they got RTD to do it so that he can clean up his Billy Piper plot point. But this would have to be his swan song, surely. His scripts are just way too undercooked, full of random illogical tangents, and lack any sense of payoffs. Hopefully the BBC will let him get to work on this special, and simultaneously they've been planning for the future soft rebooted series with a new showrunner and production team. Someone with fresh ideas that doesn't mind the past too much. And if they really think that appealing to a young audience is vital, and maybe it is, then they probably need a younger person at the top. Otherwise it comes off as a bit of an overreach. I think RTD could write a belter of a finale for himself, Piper, and maybe even the 14th Doc if he focused on the story. However, I did like your left field idea of throwing in McGann. Also, a multi-Doctor story usually rates, and there'll be pressure on this to do good numbers once again. Anyway, I'm mostly excited or relieved to know what's next. We'll be interested, as always, to hear you both discuss in more depth moving forward.
Indeed, and we did at the start of this episode, so hopefully that scratched the itch a little for you, Adrian. Yeah. I've got something from Adrian Sturrock. He says, realistically, the Disney era has been a flop overall, despite some decent episodes on an individual basis. And what happened to the whole no decision will be made until after the War Between the Land and the Sea airs? Good point, Adrian. I mentioned that earlier. Basically, that was a load of rubbish, and any future comments by those who made that comment will be viewed skeptically. The boy who cried wolf. Anyway, I'm enjoying my classic era Blu-ray box sets.
That's very true, Adrian, but as Garrick taught us, the moral of The Boy Who Cried Wolf is not don't tell lies, it's don't tell the same lie twice.
Ah, good point.
Annabelle Rhodes says, 1985 ended Doctor Who with a pretty solid Dalek story. 2025 left Doctor Who with more questions than answers, a lead already regenerating without a single Dalek or Cyberman story, a tacked-on regeneration with someone who was pulled in for a favour, and just an embarrassing final story for a Doctor who deserved better.
Can't argue with any of that, Annabelle.
Yep, clear thoughts there.
Yeah. Tristan Patterson says, if Disney is out, I wonder how they're going to deliver the Christmas special in Australia. Will the BBC come crawling back to the ABC? If so, perhaps there is some hope that classic and modern will again be available for streaming in Australia.
It's a really good question, Tristan, and it's one that I've raised more generally with the what happens now to the ownership of the Gatwa era. Does Disney retain ownership of that in perpetuity for a certain amount of time? At some point, does it revert to the BBC to be sold elsewhere? If it does remain with Disney for perpetuity, does the Gatwa era end up like the ITV series of The Goodies, which is not able to be on box sets and sort of a bit separate from the others? Or will it revert at some time? I don't know, but it's an interesting question that no one's really given an answer to.
Yeah, I know for me, I just bought the UK Gatwa box sets as they came out, knowing that in the future I'll want to go back and reference them. I'll want to watch the extras and all of that. So I've just grabbed them that way, so I don't have these immediate concerns, but they are concerns for other people. Very, very valid concerns.
No, absolutely. We have a selection of comments on your video about JMS for showrunner, Rob.
We do, yes.
The first is from Baz Michaels. How marvellous would it be to have a storyteller telling the show? #JMS for Doctor Who.
Bob the Kelpie says, can't agree more. He'd be fantastic, and indeed for the reasons you've mentioned. I wonder if being American-born, albeit a UK resident now, makes it a more difficult choice for the BBC. Either way, we actually need to have a show for him to run first.
Well, as I discussed with Dylan, these days it probably is the other way around.
Ooh. There's some sizzle for your episode.
Yes. Judge Joseph Dredd says, I'd be so down for that. I know there'll be a few odd people complaining about, oh, but he can't be the showrunner because he's brought off British, he's American. Well, neither was Sidney Newman, he was Canadian. Waris Hussein was Indian, Rachel Tatalay is American. Sarah Dollard is Australian, Ron Grainer and Anthony Coburn both Australian. So you don't have to be British to do a British show. I think it would be fantastic. I loved Babylon 5 as a kid. Couldn't really get into Sense8, but had some brilliant actors for sure. Another reason is this is a man who can write science fiction, which RTD has sadly forgotten about. He would also bring back the serialised format as Babylon 5 was a serialised show. It would also be something different, as J. Michael Straczynski would be the first person who hasn't been tied up with New Who for the past 20 years, to which we had the same people. JMS would be someone new, and I think the show needs a complete refresh and a complete brand new production team.
Absolutely agree with all of that. Absolutely. And finally, Lancaster85 says, absolutely agree. All of the above, plus he is steeped in British sci-fi. I would be so thrilled to see his name on the Who opening titles.
Yeah, look, we are both fans of JMS. We both love to see him do it. And in an era where you're only probably going to be doing 8 episodes every 18 to 24 months, it's a lot more realistic to have somebody of his age do it.
Yeah, and look, in a dead set shocker for me, I didn't tag JMS to that video or anything. He found it and reposted it on X, saying he didn't particularly like the thumbnail of him that I'd selected. He said he looked like a demented Mr. Potato Head or something. But he thought it was a fun little video, and you just could have knocked me over with a feather at that point,
That's
Dave.
the second time he's found our content, isn't it?
It is. It really is.
So
Yeah,
cool.
we did do an alternate galaxies on Babylon 5, if folk haven't heard that a long time ago.
Yes, which he did listen to and comment on, which terrified us.
Brilliant.
Nick Pickering has a comment on our Gin and TARDIS about the Day of the Daleks. Great episode. I'm absolutely on board with the rationalisation of the global political reflection and the outsider view of the alien Time Lord. I think I feel the wise hand of Barry Letts at work. I realised some time ago that I owe my moral compass to Letts, Dix and Pertwee. Better father figures you couldn't ask for. And another awesome track at the end. Could Rob Irwin be the next Stock, Aitken and Waterman? Hope I've got those names right.
I'm glad people enjoy that stuff. It's fun for me.
Yes.
Stuart James Barham, friend of the show, also on our Gin and TARDIS about Day of the Daleks, says, loved the latest Gin and TARDIS episode, guys, and I do like the story too. One of the early video releases, I got it when it came out in 86, and absolutely believed in Pertwee as the Doctor. Such a strong central performance, and Aubrey Woods gave an incredible performance too. Nuanced, and I felt sympathy for him. We'll have to watch this again. The version with more Daleks, I think.
Very fair. I'm glad you are enjoying our Gin and TARDIS on the Day of the Daleks. It was a conversation that really didn't go where I expected it to go. We watched and reacted it very differently to how we normally do, and hopefully that makes for an interesting listen.
I thought it was a really great episode too, Dave. I enjoyed producing that one.
Oh, thank you very much. Rob, what have you been watching apart from David Fisher's Doctor Who?
Yeah, not a huge amount for me this month, Dave. The complete opposite of last month, in fact. I have kept going with Deep Space Nine. I'm about a quarter of the way into season 6 now, where everything really kicks off and it gets really good. There was a run recently where my wife and I started doing 2 and sometimes 3 episodes in a sitting. And while that was very normal when we were watching, let's say, The West Wing, it's not been the case with DS9 at all. Usually we've done one episode and then we're both like, yep, good, let's get up, let's do something else, and we move on. But we've hit some episodes where it's like, do you want to watch another? Yeah. Do you want to watch another? Yeah. So that's been really good. Yes, I did watch a lot of David Fisher this time around, and I'm probably forgetting something because this month's been a bit of a blur in some ways for obvious reasons. But I did hit the audiobooks pretty hard. The David J. Howe memoir I mentioned, and I'm actually currently halfway through Mark Donaldson's memoir at the moment, Dave. He's that Australian SAS guy who won the VC in Afghanistan. There's some really, really hair-raising stories in that memoir. Really good stuff. But yeah, that's me for the month.
No, I'm really glad you're enjoying Deep Space Nine, Rob. I've said before, and I stand by it, the area where you are now, that back 6 episodes of Season 5 and that first 6 episodes of Season 6, I reckon is the best run of 12 episodes ever in Star Trek. I think that is just an extraordinarily good bunch of episodes. You've got stuff in there like Children of Time, Impact Nor, Call to Arms, Rocks and Shawls, Sacrifice of Angels, like just fantastic Star Trek in there. I really, really love that period. And you've got some good stuff coming up, and you must be very close now to Far Beyond the Stars. I look forward to hearing your view on that one.
Yeah, we haven't hit that one yet.
I went back and watched a series I've been probably meaning to watch for about 20 years now, which is Life on Mars.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this was very big around about the time that I was doing my Air Force basic training, so I wasn't seeing much TV at all. And in fact, season 3 of Doctor Who, around about that time, I was getting a couple of copies burnt on CD and it posted to me by Dad every couple of months, because I just didn't get to watch it on TV. So I missed Life on Mars completely at that point in life and hadn't gone back and watched it, and realised I probably should. So I've watched the first season. It's not at all what I expected. I thought that the mystery of what's going on would be a lot more lightly touched rather than being sort of quite implicitly tagged quite quickly as to what's going on.
Okay.
I hadn't expected that. I hadn't expected it to be quite as much of a police procedural as it actually was. So I found it interesting. I did find, however, the first sort of 3 or 4 episodes, I was like, oh, this is really good. I'm going to watch another one. Oh, I'll just start and watch another one. By the time I got to episode 8, 9, 10, I was sort of like, okay, guy from the 2000s, he's in the 70s, it's awkward, and he's doing a cop show. I've got it now. And I did sort of find I dried a little bit towards the end. So I have chosen to take a break, and I had to go and watch the David Fisher story. So I thought, I've watched season 1, I'll take a break, I'll come back over the summer and watch season 2. I am still keen to do it, but I don't think it's a bingeable story or a bingeable show. I think it's a much more one episode a week sort of series. So maybe I'll do that when I get to season 2.
Yeah, that's fair. And I know when you went out on social media and said, should I watch this? I said that I actually prefer Ashes to Ashes, which is basically a female cop in the 80s, played by Keely Hawes. I prefer that series, but Life on Mars is very good. And I think when you get to the end of it, you'll look back and say, yeah, that was really good overall, but I understand what you mean about pacing yourself too.
Yeah, no, I did look at what Ashes to Ashes was all about, and when I saw it was sort of getting towards the era where the early episodes of The Bill was set, I thought, I'm quite keen to get to that, so I will keep going for them, but as I say, I'm going to pace it out a bit.
Yeah, I think you'll like that era for that reason, yeah.
Yeah, no, I am looking forward, and I will get there in 2026. I also did watch the new Netflix series Death by Lightning, which is a 4-part mini-series about the brief presidency and assassination of James Garfield, and it is very, very well done. It obviously has certain amounts of plot exaggeration for the benefit of TV, as any of these things do, but it is about Garfield, how he ascends to the presidency, his few months in the presidency, interspersed with the story of the man who does assassinate him, and all the very close links between them. Very, very well done. It looks brilliant, but it is, broadly speaking, very historically accurate. And it's one of those ones where somebody walks on screen and you know who they're playing. So suddenly Nick Offerman walks on screen like, oh, wow, Nick Offerman's in that. And hang on, is he playing Chester Arthur? Oh, wow, he's playing Chester Arthur. So, you get that sort of a vibe. And then Bradley Whitford from The West Wing is on, like, oh, cool, Bradley Whitford's in this. Is he playing James Blaine? Oh, wow, he is. Like, they look like and they feel like the characters they are. Certainly when you get to the assassination part, like all the little weird aspects of it, like Abraham Lincoln's son being there, like that is referenced, and a whole bunch of other things are all pretty much beat for beat accurate. So really, really well done. If you're into that part of history, 1880s US, or just general political drama or history, Death by Lightning, tick from me.
Did I tag you on that in Facebook? I tagged someone on the trailer for that. I've still not seen it myself, but I saw it and thought, oh, X person will like this. Was it you? It might have been someone else.
Yes, it may well have been me. It was one of those shows where sort of by the 12th person messaging me and saying, you need to see Death by Lightning. I'm like, yes, thank you. I think by the time I sort of got to the 15th person, like, yes, it's okay, I'm watching it. But that was appropriate TV karma, because I did go out to dinner with a friend of mine a week ago, and I said to him, now, have you seen Boots yet on Netflix? He said, you're the 12th person telling me yes, I'll get to it next.
Nice.
So, the Netflix is kicking some goals at the moment.
Sure is. Next time, Dave, it's the time of year where we sit down and think, what would be a bit different? What would be a bit fun to do for the season? And despite Jessica Peterkin's email saying we should do Children of Earth sometime soon, and me having this perverse idea that we could celebrate Christmas with possibly the darkest piece of Doctor Who media out there, which I asked you about recently, Dave, we've settled on something else.
Yes, you forwarded me Jessica's email and very excitedly said, I think we should do this next episode. And I said, I would love to do this very, very soon, but do you really think Children of Earth at Christmas time is the vibe we're going for? And he said, oh, look, okay, probably not. So look, probably January, February, we will get to Children of Earth, depending on what we do in January. But no, we're absolutely going to do that. But we did think it was appropriate to do something fun and uplifting and joyful for our December episode, which will be out between Christmas and New Year. I did point out we haven't done any outside of the Gatwa era, any really New Who stuff for quite a while. So I thought we should do a couple of fun New Who episodes, Rob.
Yes, and because we're doing a couple, we get to choose one each. And my fun episode that I've selected from the Tennant era is The Unicorn and the Wasp. And
very funny, Rob, we messaged each other to decide what we're going to do. We said, all right, pick one each. And you said you had one picked. And I said, well, I've narrowed mine down to 3. What's yours? You said, The Unicorn and the Wasp. And I said, well, I've narrowed mine down to 2. So that was on both of our shortlist. You've picked it. The episode that I've picked to watch is Time Heist.
Yeah, which is an episode I don't think I haven't revisited since it aired.
No, me either. I do remember it being fun. I almost went for Robot of Sherwood, but I just thought, there've been a lot of conversations over the years about Robot of Sherwood, but not really any about Time Heist. So I think that'd be the more interesting one to do. So The Unicorn and the Wasp and Time Heist for Christmas next month.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Absolutely. In the meantime, there will be our little special episode with Dylan on the production of Doctor Who. We have got a list makers coming out about our top 5 classic seasons. What do you think they might be, listeners? Jen and TARDIS will be back in the new year, and you will be able to hear me on the 42 to Doomsday Christmas special, which will be out at some point around Christmas.
Yes, I've recorded something for the Marin Chess Club with Luke Sims-Jenkins. I'm not sure if that's going to pop out before New Year's or not. Maybe it will. Keep an eye on their feed and see what happens.
No, absolutely, and do check them out. That's a fun podcast.
It is. But until then, I've been Rob.
And I've been Dave.
And we'll see you next time on the Doctor Who show.
Let's go watch the cricket.
Oh, yeah.
Goodbye.
Bye. You've been listening to
The Doctor Who Show with Rob and Dave.
Find us online by searching for
The Doctor Who Show.
We also love it when you write in. Drop us a line anytime at hello@thedwshow.net.